Hey houseplant friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm gonna tell you about some houseplants that seem easy but are surprisingly hard to grow. These are gonna be a list of some common houseplants that I think maybe shouldn't be pushed so hard to newer plant parents. I know that I actually still struggle with some of them. If you're a hoverer, if you hover over your plants, these plants might be a little easy for you to take care of. But if you're someone like me where you take care of your plants only a couple times a week and you don't always check all of them often, these are definitely gonna be plants that you're gonna want to be careful of if you're a new plant parent. A lot of these plants you actually won't even see in my collection because I'm just done. I have given up on them and I'm not gonna be trying them again, but a few of them are in my collection. So what's this list? Before we get into it, please make sure you hit like and subscribe. Maybe you've been binge watching my videos and you just forgot to hit that subscribe button. Welcome to the community. I also have YouTube memberships, which you can check out at the link in the description. It's only $5 a month and you'll be joining a community of 160 houseplant parents. So the number one thing on this list that I think is a mistake for new plant parents to buy is a Fiddle Leaf Fig. These plants are so dramatic and not in a good way. Normally when we talk about dramatic plants on this channel or most channels, we're talking about a plant that will really tell you, really wilt when it's like, hey, I need attention. Once it's wilted, you're pretty much like done for. I have tried so many different ficus and failed with most of them. The only one I've been able to keep alive is my beautiful Fiddle Leaf Fig Gloria that was entrusted to me by my beautiful friend Tori when she moved. This plant has value to me. I'm not just so keen to, at the first sign of weakness, like be like, whatever. But I've gotten this plant to put out 2 new leaves and it's getting taller, so that is exciting. But I've also been doing houseplant stuff for the last like 3 years. If you were a new plant parent and you put this next to a window or where there's a draft, this plant is not going to be happy, especially if you're in a dry climate like I am. Also, the Fiddle Leaf Fig is very picky with how and what kind of water, like how often you water it and what kind of water you're giving it. So you'll need to be careful. I find that mine really likes purified water that's lukewarm and it likes to be watered about every 2 weeks. I've been really good at not getting it to have those red spots on it, which just mean that you're watering it too much or too little. Really, really hard to know. I really think that the Fiddle Leaf Fig is not a plant for beginners. Obviously, just disclaimer, you can buy whatever plants you want. They're gonna be a little out of pocket. Rarer plants are easier for me to take care of because they just go in a thing and then that thing takes care of them, like a greenhouse or a terrarium. But yeah, this is not a plant I would say would be easy for beginners. If you're a hoverer, like you are a hover waterer or an underwaterer, this plant is very particular. The next kind of plants we're gonna be talking about here are cactus and succulents. Succulents are not an easy plant to take care of. I am still figuring it out. I usually try to let mine get really, really dry and then I give them a ton of water. Cactus are even more difficult because cactus, you're only gonna wanna water during the summer and you're gonna water sparingly. Big drinks when it does get watered, but you're not gonna wanna water it too much, otherwise it'll rot. Same thing with lithops. You get a lithop, you literally never water that thing. Cactus, you do not water it for like 7 months of the year if it's an indoor cactus. Cactus and succulents, while they are cute and fun gifts to give to people, I would say that if you're giving a gift to someone who is not familiar with plants, probably skip on the cactus and succulent because they're most likely going to kill it, because who even knows the correct way to water cactus and succulents? The next plant I want to talk about is a Phalaenopsis orchid. These are the orchids you're gonna see all over your grocery store. They're so cute and pretty, but they are not beginner's plants. Really, people throw them away as soon as they lose their flower. They can reflower from the same spike sometimes, and they will regrow a new plant out of the old plant, and then you can have a new plant. However, they take a lot of time and effort, and also fertilizing is different for orchids because you fertilize based on the foliage. While it's a really beautiful gift to give to someone because the flower is so pretty, it really is, I would not say that Phalaenopsis orchids are a beginner's plant, like you're just getting into plants. Don't get a Phalaenopsis orchid. It won't just die on you out of nowhere. You'll probably have a hard time figuring out when to water it, probably won't know how best to fertilize it, and getting it to rebloom is going to be quite a hassle. Of course, you can do all the Googling you want and research you want and like get it to bloom and get it to grow amazing, but it's not a plant for someone who does not know about plants. Next plant I want to talk about is the string of pearls. This is a plant I see sold all the time, marketed kind of for beginners, and it's a plant that people just murder. I actually am working on keeping mine alive. I'm actually looking at it right now, and mine is doing really, really well. I bought it about 3.5 months ago and this is the longest I've ever kept a string of pearls alive for. Been kind of letting it do its own thing, treating it a little bit more like a succulent, but it does get direct bright light. Probably for 8 hours of the day it gets direct bright light. I water it when the pearls kind of start to look pruny, but this plant is a plant that's very, very easy to overwater and not give enough light to. Therefore, I would say not a good beginner's plant in my humble opinion. Next type of plant I want to talk about are begonias. These are plants that you can literally buy at like the grocery store now. And the thing about begonias is that unless you're having a terrarium begonia and it's in a terrarium and it's going to be so easy to take care of because it's in a terrarium, there are a lot of begonias out there that are really hard to take care of. I, for one, struggle with any begonia that doesn't go directly into a greenhouse or a terrarium. I haven't actually figured out how to keep begonias outside of a terrarium. While you might live in a climate that's more suited to begonias just being around, like maybe you have more humidity and light, I don't have a lot of humidity in my general city. I think it's like resting 10% here. Like begonia Sinbad or begonia maculata whitey eye, that's the only one I've been able to take care of, and that's because I'm obsessed with it. Next plants we're going to talk about are Calathea and Maranta. I will say, if you are a beginner, a Calathea ornata and then a Calathea magoiana are both very good, easy intro beginner Calathea, but those plants are still going to want medium indirect light, and they're still going to want to be watered often, and they're not going to like any water that isn't filtered. They're still picky and they're still a bit of a diva, but they're much harder to kill than most any other Calathea. Also Calathea or Marantas, like Maranta green and Maranta red, those are much more difficult to take care of. They're much more picky about even the temperature of water. I have a lot of friends who keep Maranta and they're just fine, but my friends who have them have also been keeping them for a long time. And it's one thing to keep a plant and have it for a month or two and have it just like survive. I'm talking about growing. If you want to try to grow these plants, oh, if you're a beginner, it's gonna be really hard for you to figure out. Next plant I want to talk about is so frustrating for me, and there's actually two plants, even though it's not one plant, it's two plants, but I'm counting them as one, and that is going to be the polka dot plant and the nerve plant. So the fittonia and then whatever the polka dot plant one is. This is a plant that a bunch of beginners get all the time because it's like $3 at Home Depot, and it's pretty and it's colorful, but the problem is that this plant needs water like every 2 to 3 days, and if you forget for like 1 second, like it's dead. Your plant's dead. It's so overly dramatic, and you need to water it so much. This is another plant that does not like water that's not filtered or distilled, so you can't just use your tap water, so you got to put a little bit more thought into it. It's another plant that I see people get all the time and then they just murder. There are people that can't keep fittonia, but it just takes a lot of maintenance and a lot of kind of hovering. Next plant I want to talk about are Syngoniums. Don't know if it's just me, but the only Syngoniums I see do good ever are people who live in high humidity areas and people who keep their Syngoniums in their greenhouse. Whenever I've had a Syngonium and my friends, like it'll put out a new leaf. I'm not talking about Harley, by the way. As you guys know, Harley has amazing Syngonium, but that's also her favorite genus. Syngonium are so particular. They need a lot of water, a lot of humidity, and a lot of light. They're actually a vining plant. They will vine out like a pothos does. But you would never know, because those plants are so hard to grow. They're so ridiculously hard to grow, but they're like $3 at Home Depot. So like, why not? But then they just die. They die and they die and they die, and they're so difficult to take care of. So the second to last plant I want to talk about is air plants. So it's one thing to buy an air plant and keep it, and it like lives in your house for a couple months and then it, you know, kind of crinkles up and dies. Air plants need more water than you think they would. Most air plants should be watered like once a week by soaking them in the sink, and you want to make sure that no water is getting in the crown of it or it'll rot. So it's most people like will get an air plant and they'll throw it on their shelf and then it'll just like die. Air plants are something I struggle with, which is why I don't tend to buy them anymore, because I think I've kept up to date on their watering and then I look at it and it's turned brown and it's like rotted. So air plants and me don't exactly get along, even though they're pretty like low maintenance plants. When it comes to the watering, that's where it will get you. The last plant I want to talk about is notorious. I actually haven't seen it sold anywhere anymore, in my area at least, because people aren't buying them, and that's the alocasia poly. Alocasia are one of my favorite genuses. I love them so much, like my top 4 favorite genuses. However, alocasia poly does not belong in that spot in my heart, and I will tell you why. This alocasia is so hard to take care of, and I don't know exactly why that is. All I know is that people kill this thing left and right. People ask me more about what is wrong with their alocasia poly than I get questions about any other plant next to the Thai constellation, which, by the way, is an honorable mention we're going to talk about in a second. The alocasia poly, that thing just rots. It just rots, and I don't know if it wants less water or more water, if I'm not giving it enough light or if I'm giving it too much light. Not to mention they're also spider mite magnets, so if you get a beginner in alocasia and it gets spider mites and they get all over all their other plants, that poor baby plant parent is going to be so overwhelmed. So I would say just stay away from alocasia unless the plant parent has suggested that they want one. But if you are going to get someone an alocasia and they are a new plant parent, do not get them an alocasia poly. We have an honorable mention here, which is going to be the Thai constellation. This is a plant that beginners usually go towards because it is a staple Monstera albo. It's not a Monstera albo, but it is a variegated Monstera and it is staple. And beginners often worry that they're not going to be able to keep up with the variegation that's going to be on a normal albo. They're worried it's going to revert or they won't be able to do much with it, so they would rather just get something that's stable. What I would say to that is don't get a Thai constellation. For me, I don't think that they're pretty. I really do not like them that much unless they're huge, like unless they're very large. They're also very expensive for what you get. I think if you have a chance to get a Costa Farms one, that's worth it because it's like 99 bucks for this massive plant. But if you're just buying a Thai constellation and you buy a teeny tiny little baby that has no fenestrations, first of all, good luck ever getting that thing to fenestrate. Second of all, it is the slowest growing plant I have ever witnessed in my life. I actually don't own one because I heard so many horror stories of new plant parents. All these people were getting these Thai constellations and I learned from people's mistakes and I was like, no. And you know what? Borzigianas grow so fast, they're so worth it. So that is my list of plants that I have given up on / plants that I do not think are for beginners. Let me know what you thought of this list. I know this might be a little controversial because so many of these plants are like so clearly for beginners, like they are marketed for beginners. I think that you have an easier time taking care of Hoya, which need almost no help, or String of Hearts, or some Monstera deliciosa. I think Monstera deliciosa is a great beginner's plant. Thanks so much for watching this video. Please make sure you hit like, subscribe, and tweet me at PlantMeAshley. Follow me on Instagram at PlantMeAshley as well, and on TikTok. I'm making TikTok content now. Go follow me on TikTok. Also, become a channel member. Like I said at the beginning of this video, it's only $5 a month. There are other tiers you can pick from as well, but the $5 a month gives you so much for what you're paying for. You're joining a community of over 160 members, and they're almost always available to hang out. It's just a bunch of people who want to meet other plant parents who also like plants, so it's like, hey, why not? Anyways, thanks so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys in the next houseplant section. Goodbye!
Thank you so much for the extra channel support to the Planted Cauliflower, All the Green Places, and Botanicas.